Hello, my name is Jack Heritage, practical karate instructor from the Cotswolds.
And I am Pat Woodward, amateur enthusiast and practitioner in a number of different martial arts styles.
And welcome back, guys, to the Armchair Combatives podcast. Hello, Pat. How are you?
I'm all good, my man. How's things?
Yeah, all good, man. Just busy doing stuff.
Very busy.
So busy. Got so much on, which is good though. I think it's nice to be busy, especially with the club kind of beginning to come into its own a little bit more. It's nice to be able to get more things going and have more things organised, like different locations, different things going on, different seminars hosting. So I think it's good to be busy.
I agree. I think it's nice to see the club kind of blossoming. I know you've had to shut down one of your venues recently, but that's only to kind of open up in a much nicer location.
Absolutely.
So it's good. It's good to kind of see even our setbacks are proving to be fruitful in their own way because it's opening up into new dojo spaces. So it's always good to see the club expanding.
Oh, 100%.
Very nice to see. So, what have you got for me today, my man? Because you seemed quite excited about it.
I'm always excited. I'm always excited to sit down and talk to you, Pat. That's the reason. You know what? Today I want to talk about something that I think for anybody that has ever practiced martial arts, especially if you are of the age of the Instagram, the Facebook, the TikTok, you've come across this stuff and either found it hilariously funny or you've been like, well, fucking do that. Leave me alone. Okay. And today we are talking about, and we're bringing in, debunking the art of Bullshido.
Oh, right.
Oh, I know.
I'm already getting a bit irritable.
Yeah.
I can already feel it. I can feel
my
it.
Martial arts sense is
tingling. I can feel it rising from the place in my gut.
Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up to you, Pat, is because, and like I'm just gonna throw this out of fucking left field, is that you are well known for having practiced Aikido. Oh, we gotta hit him with it. And obviously Aikido has a bad rep.
Yeah.
For Bullshido claims and stuff like that. So, from your experience of practicing such an art as Aikido, now I know you've talked about it in the past, like the Aikido you did was slightly different than what is often seen in the grand scheme of what is watched online.
Yes.
But having practiced an art like that, do you still think that there is elements of Bullshido in Aikido?
I think yes. Short version.
Mm-hmm.
Good episode, Jack.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, I can just kind of feel the eggshells and broken glass around me at this point. As I
creeping around the topic.
As I delicately step forward into the topic. The short answer is unfortunately yes. For the sake of fairness, no more or less than I think you'd find around any martial art.
I agree.
But I think the problem is good Aikido done well looks fake as fuck because it's very much people seem to get very hung up on the idea of there's the Uke and the Tori. You've got the guy who's doing the technique and the guy who's getting the technique done to him.
Sure. And
I think it inadvertently creates this immediate mentality of there's a good guy and there's a bad guy. Right?
Okay, yeah.
And if you see somebody get punched and they pull off a beautiful shianagi and they send the guy rolling across the mat 20 feet, then it's hard, even as somebody who knows Aikido, it's hard not to look at that and go, did you have to do 4 cartwheels on the way out?
Yeah.
But I understand that is from the standpoint of you're both learning in that moment.
Yeah.
Somebody's learning to do the technique, and you're learning, and the other guy's learning how to break fall and roll away. And a lot of what Aikido is with the break falls and the escape rolls and things like that. That's exactly what they're for. It's the idea of if you do ever lose your balance, if you are ever pushed. And they practice a throwing art, so that's going to happen a lot.
Yeah.
Then you know how to get straight back up again.
Yeah, sure.
I know we I know we were kind of talking about in our bad student episode a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about somebody lolling about on the floor. And from a self-protection practice, that's a terrible habit to be in. Because if you happen to go to the ground with somebody and you just stay there, you're going to get your face filled in. You're going to get a concrete sandwich. Like,
Yeah.
that's the unfortunate fact. Like, you need so much of what we do and so much of what you've taught for our ground game is, are you on the floor? You don't want to be there. Get up, get moving.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the Aikido breakfall is for. It's if you are ever knocked down or thrown down, or you just happen to lose your balance in a self-protection scenario because you're fighting in the dark, in uneven terrain, anything like that, then you know how to very immediately right yourself and create distance with your opponent.
Yeah,
with somebody trying to attack you. So it's one of those where, like, and I think people don't like it because it doesn't look applicable and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look real.
No.
I think is the short version. And the problem is because Aikido is one of those martial arts that borders on, like, these nutcases you see online who do, like, these Jedi mind trick force field fucking things as well.
Don't.
And it's kind of and it's I say this as an Aikidoka and somebody who practices Tai Chi. It doesn't look real.
No.
A lot of good Aikido doesn't look real. But I suppose there's an element of this. There's certain elements of judo that look fantastical. When you see somebody get thrown and their legs go 25 feet in the air and they come back down again, there's an element of, like, that almost doesn't look real.
Yeah.
But it's but again, it's the understanding of, like, if you get that right amount of force, you can throw somebody like that. If somebody does get thrown in Aikido, it's a small movement to take somebody off balance, but it can happen. That's how the equilibrium is a much more delicate thing than people think it is.
Yeah, well, definitely.
If you get that right, you have to train, you have to get to that right point, but you can get to that point where just the slightest application of force does send somebody going, and the breakfall is so that person doesn't just end up eating concrete. Because from our perspective as Aikidoka, it was a thing of, you might get thrown, maybe not necessarily in this fashion, but if somebody does throw you over, you don't just want to eat it face first. Try and roll out of it. Try and create the distance. Try and get up, because you can either respond to the threat or you can move and escape. Whereas a lot of these throws, if they just go to their kind of logical conclusion on somebody that doesn't know how to fall, then you just throw them on their face. Or you pull them down onto their back, or you roll them off. You get them in the Ikkyo lock is a case. If you don't roll out of an Ikkyo, then you end up in a really uncomfortable armbar. And so it's that thing of it's the idea of, if you don't roll out of these techniques from your safety perspective, they will you're done. That's the end of the fight.
Yeah.
That's the end of the confrontation that you're engaging in. And yeah, some of it just, but I'll freely sit here and say, like, some of it doesn't look right.
No.
Some of it doesn't look real. And I think, you see these guys, like, I can't remember who exactly it was on either side of the thing, but, like, there was the idea of, like, there was this guy who would enter a kneeling position, put his hands up, and it was like, I create a mental force field of good Aiki, and it will protect me from your strikes. And they just, they got, and these guys come in and they're like, all right, we'll test your theory. And the guy just starts rocking his shit. Like, the guy comes in, he's, this Aiki master puts up his force field. And this was an American dude, by the way, before anyone was like, see, these old Japanese masters know nothing. It's like, no, this was an American dude. And he's on his knees, he's got his force field up. And the other guy comes in and he kneels in front of him and he just starts throwing punches. And the guy just has nothing. The guy's just eating the punches. And I will say, whilst we do need to debunk Bullshido when we see it, because teaching somebody wrong is dangerous.
Yeah.
I will also say, just as this is going to be a contentious episode, I can already feel it.
Oh, 100%.
I'll freely sit here and I'll say these like Bullshido Mythbusters, you look like assholes. These guys, because it's like okay, because it's one of those where like there was more than one repetition of this whole thing of like okay, I guess I put my Ike force field and the guy's punching and it goes like you're just beating up this dude now. He's wrong. You've proved him wrong. You're just wailing on this dude now for your own amusement, and it's the idea of like yeah, he's teaching something that's nuts.
Sure.
Like you've debunked him. You've proved him wrong. And you get I know, and this is the thing. In a weird way, you mentioned immediately the kind of nail on the head, which was this is a content thing. This is somebody producing internet content of look at this amazing martial art technique that I can do with my willing student that I definitely don't pay. And it's like oh well, and it's like, but at the same time, in a weird way, so many people profit by then making Bullshido alert content around these videos, I think it's a good practice, but I think it's difficult to do in a way that doesn't make you also look like a bit of an arsehole.
I totally agree, because don't get me wrong, I will happily sit there watch some of the breakdown videos of of the Bullshido. Like somebody will post like a video of something, and then somebody will make like a stupid like parody of it. And don't get me wrong, there are a couple of guys, and I like how they do it, because they're not like specifically like taking. Like they're not like ripping the absolute piss out of the guys, but I think there are a couple of Chinese guys, and they were watching. I think it was some form of Systema, and the guys were like being. Like, it was like very, like, so somebody was literally like coming at them with a sword straight on, and they were like rolling their body around the sword. And don't get me wrong, like, anybody with half a brain will realise that that is not an effective way to deal with somebody that's trying to hit you with a sword. First of all, why you're practicing with a sword in the first place is a bit of a myth in my head. However, the guys were just kind of having a laugh with it, and they were turning it into some sort of like sexual dance, where like they were like dancing around the sword and then like stroking the other guy, and it was quite funny, and like it was harmless, but they weren't sat there like completely ripping the piss out of it. They were just kind of going, "This is what we think this looks like, and we're just going to have a bit of fun with it." I think what can be quite dangerous is if you're, like you say, if you're beginning to profit off of calling out other people's martial arts, or calling out other people's styles, or how they teach and what they do. There are people that do it well, because they do it from good places, where they're going, what you're teaching is dangerous, what you're teaching is not benefiting your students, and you're putting people at risk. That you have got full right to call them out and go, that is not okay. Yeah. I think. When it becomes a problem is if you're taking a 15-second clip of somebody doing a drill that you have no idea why they're doing it, because they haven't contextualized the video. So it could be, as an example, you could see some of the karate drills we do, right? Mm. We have a drill where we throw a haymaker, you cover and crash in so you don't get hit with it. You then do an arm manipulation and you throw a haymaker back. And the idea is it's a flow drill, right? It's just, I'm practicing covering and basic arm manipulation stuff, right? And basic trapping.
But there's definitely the guys will leap in,
yeah,
and they will go, the haymaker's not a realistic opening shot. That cover doesn't do anything to protect your lower body. Why are you just throwing the same shot back? And it's like, and this is why I think the point. This is kind of why I love the idea to debunk the idea of Bullshido. Because, like anything, there are cheap imitations of people who've seen something and they don't understand it, and they recreate it in a way that is purely content based.
Yeah.
Similarly, you then get into guys who have a laugh, and they might be able to make monetizable content out of it.
Yeah.
But they have a laugh in making videos of like, the guys with this. I've seen the video of the two guys who are like doing like the Boogie Nights thing around the sword, and they're caressing the other guy, and it's like, it makes me laugh.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's funny comedic content, whilst also having the underlying thread of this is ridiculous. Yeah. This is not good martial practice.
No,
I think the danger immediately that leaps to mind is if you make a career or a profit from debunking other people's Bullshido, where do you stop? Because in an ideal world, you'll get to a point where there's no more Bullshido and you run out of profitable content. So then you have no choice but to look at, like I said, these 10, 15-second clips of people doing the karate drill that you just and then going like, well, and then taking the piss out of that. And if you've got a following and people are like, oh well, these guys, they make good, entertaining, engaging content, and their entire content model revolves around this stuff doesn't work, then very immediately you've just said all of karate doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's the issue that I find with it, because it's like if you're making this content on a regular basis, I think it's really important that you have a duty of care to make sure that when you're calling it out, you're calling out stuff that you understand is definitely wrong and definitely dangerous, or definitely I would even hazard it on ineffective. If it's ineffective, but people are practicing it for the art of the style, or they're practicing it because the historical interest in the martial art, okay, that's not something you can call out. Because, as an example, if I was going to an Aikido club and I'm specifically there because I want to learn how to breakfall, right, and all I do is I say to the instructor, I'm like, listen, mate, like, I just want to learn how to breakfall. Can you teach me how to breakfall? And I get sent and somebody records me doing a 10-second clip of me getting thrown around and just doing breakfalls. Of course, I'm going to go, that's ineffective and this is not a real martial art. But that's not the reason I'm there. I'm just learning how to do some rolls because it's safer for me to land.
Exactly.
So
the more damaging thing that I would be almost worried about is you going there and you learning breakfalls and somebody goes, Aikido defeats karate master.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And this is is again, like, I know. I want to make this very clear to the listeners at home. This is not going to be our internet episode take 2.
No.
We're trying to focus here on a specific topic. But that's something that I could very immediately, this is kind of where these kind of anti-Bullshido content creators come out of the woodwork, and they see a 10-second clip and they go, they see Jack getting thrown around in his karate gi and they go, Aikido destroys karate master. Aikido defeats every aspect of karate. And it kind of bolsters this kind of, how would you describe it, Jack? Almost like a cult-like mentality? There
is definitely, I think cult-like is the way that I've seen it described and also have experienced it as. Specifically, like you said, we're not making this into an internet-specific one today, but there is definitely a cult-like behaviour in martial arts and the way in which people, interact with them. Because I think there's karate guys that are like, fuck everything else, karate's the only thing that's good, oh, you guys do this, it's shit, da 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 da. And then, you have people that start arguing about styles, and no, our style's better than your style, and what have you. And then it goes down to a club level, our club's better than your club. And it's all this fucking, what's the best way of putting it? Like that kind of chimp mentality of tribe. It's like, this is our tribe, we're going to fight everybody that's against our tribe, and they do it differently, so that's an issue, etc. So I think the most important thing for us to really cover then, Pat, seeing as we've kind of prefaced this episode a little bit more, is what defines an art as Bullshido?
I think there is... Obviously, it's a wide-ranging question. The immediate bullet point that my finger goes to is pressure testing.
Okay.
If your art's applicatable skills, the striking found in your art, or the throwing, or the grappling, or anything like that. I mean, to be fair, Ushiba's quoted for saying Aikido is 90% striking. I can't remember the last time I saw an Aikido guy try and hit anyone. And this is again this is the problem with kind of distillation of theory, as it were, because Aikido is an excellent throwing and body manipulation art. It's very good for understanding how to get your positioning right and how to work on that. But because it's also described as the gentle art of Aikido, schools have eliminated their striking application, and there are schools that have striking application, and they're renowned as being nut jobs. basically.
Brutal.
Yeah, like you know, you get into the idea of like very famously in Aikido, you had Chiba Sensei, who his renown was he would break students' limbs with techniques because that's what they're for. And he would snap elbows and he would break legs and he would crack ribs. And he developed definitively a cult like following of these people who are like, yeah, we're hardened warriors because we trained under Chiba. This is where Chiba fractured my ulna. This is where Chiba broke my femur. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of these guys were they fully drank the Kool-Aid type of thing. But I think where an art is kind of if an art can be pressure tested, I think it definitely eliminates it from the ranks of kind of Bullshido.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I myself do go. I go online. I see videos of people doing martial arts techniques, and there are some that I go, yes, I can definitely understand how that would work. No, I definitely understand how that wouldn't work, and this is just content. And then there are ones in the middle where I'm kind of going, ooh,
I need to try it.
would that work? And it's a really and this is the thing. It's a really interesting experience of going to somebody and showing your mate a video and going, do you know what, mate? I saw this video the other day. You're a really good grappler. Do you think that grapple works? And kind of breaking it down and trying it. And somebody with more grappling experience might look at a grappling technique and they might just go, no, that's not going to work. And you kind of go, and I will admit, and this is kind of, again, where you kind of joke about the cult-like mentality, but there's a point in your head where it's not your video, you haven't made it, but there's a point where like, oh no, but I wanted that to work because that looked really good.
Yeah.
And you kind of go like, well, why doesn't it work? And you work it out and it goes like, actually, no, it looked really smooth, it looked really sensible, but in actuality, I need to put in way too much force for this to actually work. Even if you get it, because one of the instructors in CKS, he talks about putting a bit of dirt into your techniques,
Yeah.
just to create that shock factor, and that allows you to apply certain techniques easier because you take away the active resistance.
Yeah.
But even then, there are certain techniques where you try and you go, even with that bit of dirt, that's not going to work. And that's just the way the biscuit breaks. But I think if you can take something that you see online, or you can put a technique online, and then when it's challenged, you can prove that it's pressure tested and pressure testable, that I think is the surefire way of proving that your technique is not Bullshido.
I think that's that's about right.
And I think the reason why Aikido gets a lot of flack is because Aikido does work in a dojo setting, and a lot of the Aikido schools, barring things like Tomiki, which is still taught to the police in Japan, a lot of the Aikido schools, for their own benefit more than anything, went, we are not interested in proving ourselves to you, as in the general public. If you want to come and learn Aikido, our doors are open. We are not interested in defending ourselves to you. Which I think is a strangely admirable thing to say and to think, because it is an element of the Aikido was not ever billed as a self-protection art. Aikido always, I think, especially reading Ushiba's book, I think it's very much a case of Aikido was always listed as this is a martial art you should practice and you should internalize, but it's an internal martial art as much as it's an external one. The techniques here do work, and I think once you have a solid grasp of Aikido, you understand a lot more about throwing. You understand as much about throwing as a judoka would, for example. And I think it's one of those where, at the same time, because a lot of these schools took on this kind of higher moral application that I think Ushiba was rooting for in his later years, as it were.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them got into the mindset of, I know my art works, I don't need to prove that to you. But then that means that generations down the line, Aikido is not used to being pressure tested. So even the best Aikido practitioners would struggle in the octagon.
Yeah,
to take it into
no, of course
it's
not.
that thing of like you couldn't take an Aikidoka and put him in the octagon. You couldn't take an Aikidoka and put him in the boxing ring.
No.
And I think there was an interesting video I did see where it was like Aikido third Dan spars karate third Dan. And it was kind of like, you know, the karate guy was getting taken off his feet a lot. But there is an element of, I'm not seeing a lot of what I would consider submission throws, or, you know, in a kind of contested sporting event.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a lot of what I would describe as finishing moves. If you're going with point-based sparring, then the karate guy's winning. Because the karate guy, you know, gets a couple of shots, maybe gets a couple of shots in, a couple of punches, but then as soon as he's into this kind of the Aikido guy's bubble, he's getting thrown.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing you can do about it. And that's not me being like, Aikido's great and karate sucks. That's not me doing that at all. But it's like, as soon as he enters... But it would be the same if it was judoka spars karate master. You know?
Yeah. It's
as soon as the you can throw kicks and punches and all of that. As soon as the judoka gets his hands on you, you're getting thrown.
Yeah.
If he's a third dan judoka, you're getting thrown. There's no two ways about it.
I thought the really interesting thing that you said a second ago was how Ishiba in his later life was more like, this is a self-perfection martial art, opposed to like all the other stuff. You know, it's about, you know, improving yourself and stuff like that. But if you notice though, that there's a lot of martial arts instructors, particularly Japanese, Chinese martial arts, would say it's about internalized principles. It's about, you know, having a good character and all that stuff. And I totally agree with that. But it's quite funny because I only thought about this when you said it. All of those guys said this later in their life. However, all of them are people that were sparring, pressure testing, and know that what they do works before they were saying stuff like that. Funnily enough, do you know why they're saying it then? It's because they're old and they don't fucking spar anymore. Okay? They're saying it now because it's like, it's about having a good character. It's about making sure that you're a good person. Of course, yeah, we know as a self-defense instructor, I know that having a good character and being somebody that is not going to get yourself into bad situations is a good start for self-defense, right? Yeah. Don't put yourself in bad situations, okay? Or if you're hanging around with bad people, stop, okay? But the interesting thing is all of those guys were guys that trained, that got thrown around, learned, oh shit, that doesn't work, or oh, how do I make it work? And the problem is, like you talk about, it's like this distillation in art over time changes how it's practiced and the understanding of what the techniques are for, right? So, you know, there's old school Aikidoka that will, you know, they'll say like, you know, at the end of a session, we do like 30 minutes of randori. And, you know, we'd be thrown around the mat all the time. And, you know, I'd go home with a really sore wrist because I've been fucking Kotegashi all.
No, and this is the thing, like, the idea of the randori is, I think, a great training mechanic. Because if you're sparring, yes, it's energetic. Yes, it's both. Yes, you might have your objectives, but it's one guy. You know where the punches are coming from. I love the idea of the randori as a training mechanic. For those that don't practice Aikido, it's essentially you form a ring with students, and there's somebody in the middle of the ring, and the idea is, anybody from the ring can go and deliver an attack to the person in the center, because it's basically an awareness drill that's been highly pressurized. You know an attack is coming, you just don't know from where. And if you have and this is the thing, like, if you have your back to somebody and they decide to go and attack you, you have to be keeping your head on a swivel. You have to be keeping alert, because otherwise you're going to get punched in the back of the head. And so it's the idea of, yes, it's a very formalized thing of you come and you deliver one attack. Maybe, you know, maybe there's kind of more modern iterations that I've been in, which just like, you keep throwing punches until that guy throws you.
Yeah. But
the short form formula is, you're in the center, somebody makes an attack, you throw them out the circle. And then, you know, it kind of keeps resetting. And the idea is like, they've got time to pick their moment and measure attack, whereas you're just being consistently washed with attackers. kind of thing. And I think it's a great one. I'll be honest. I think it would really benefit every martial art to have a version of your randori, but the randori isn't pressure testing.
No, it's
The
not.
randori is pressurized, but it's not pressure testing.
Okay.
Yeah, because it on the face of it, it's an objective game. Because the objective of the people outside of the circle is to deliver an attack and then escape with an ikemi. The objective of the person inside is to evade an attack and deliver a throw or a lock.
Sure.
Those are the objectives. That's not pressure testing.
No, definitely not. I think, it's interesting you say pressure testing, because for me, that was where my head goes as well when it comes down to the Bullshido techniques. Okay, so I think, for me, there's two types of Bullshido, right? There's bullshit techniques, and then there's bullshitter instructors. Okay, so for me, if a technique doesn't work, like you say, the only way that we can deal with that is pressure testing it. Does it work under the conditions of what we do? Now, here's the kind of caveat to this as well, is that if we were to say to a Aikidoka, okay, you're going to go into a boxing match and I want you to see if you can pull off a kotegaeshi, it's not going to happen because
on those big gloves.
Exactly. Yeah. First of all, the boxer's wearing big fucking gloves, and he's just creaming you in the head over and over again. So even as let's just say you're an Aikidoka that actually knows how to cover and knows how to evade and knows how to move and got good footwork for a boxing context, the chances of you actually catching the wrist and being able to pull off that throw is not going to happen. But that's because you're trying to put Aikido up against something that it's not built to deal with, in my opinion. Especially in that context of a consensual violence, we've agreed that we're going to do some boxing and you've agreed that you're going to try and throw me with a specific wrist lock. Obviously, that's a very kind of very simplistic version of it, but that doesn't mean that the wrist lock doesn't work. It just means it doesn't work for the context in which you've put it against. So as an example, I think, we were talking about this a few weeks ago now, of the kind of accidental, incidental, things with locks and like wrist locks, shoulder locks, elbow locks, all that kind of stuff, is that, we don't often seek them. It's if they're there, I'll do them. But I quite like that because for me, I've never been able to make locks specifically work from striking base positions, where somebody's throwing shots at you. For me, they work far better when you are now in contact with that person. You're not going to catch a hand and then suddenly go for it. It's more likely going to come from the fact they've gripped you, and now, seeing as you're gripping me, I'm going to bend your fucking elbow the wrong way. So for me, it's all about the context. When I was talking about the bullshitter instructors, though, I think the thing that we must look at in terms of if we're going to call an art Bullshido is, are they delivering what they say they're delivering? Because for me, I think if you go to a club and they say, listen, we do this because we enjoy the art of Aikido, we're not particularly worried about... actually, you know what? No, we've hounded on Aikido enough.
Leave Aikido alone, Jack! Aikido's had enough!
Is that enough today? Right, I'm sorry, Yushiba. Right, let's just use another art then. So let's just say, go on then, let's go karate. Go on, because why not?
I think, again, it's very much about... it's about contextualizing what you're delivering.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Because if I approached somebody and they were like, what do you practice? And they were going like, oh yeah, I practice an art of debilitating an opponent from across the room. And it's like, if that guy is a karateka, I'm going to go, you're off your tree, mate. If that guy does like military CQC, yeah, you shoot people. Of course, your art debilitates people from across the room. You shoot people. That's a gun range. This is the thing. And I think this is, again, like, ironically, you look back, okay, kind of, we'll return to the kind of tangentialization.
Yeah.
It's kind of, in terms of, like, bullshit instructors can sound bullshit out of context.
Oh yeah! Oh god! Yeah, I'm sure I do.
So there's that thing of just like you take like a really old esoteric example. You take like the Wudang monks, who learned who were learning these kind of old school styles of kung fu. These monks lived for hundreds of years. No, they didn't. they practiced a good diet, they exercised every day, and they breathed mountain air their whole lives. They lived a long time. It's important to understand that these monks lived a long time compared to the average Chinese peasant in the 9th century. What we've established, this is where it kind of comes in the context of the monks lived for hundreds of years, or did the monks live for several generations?
Yeah.
Because if you knew a monk when you were, if you were born, and you knew a monk who was 20, and then you had a daughter, you had a child, and they had a child, and they had a child, in 9th century China, that might be a span of 40 years, right?
Yeah.
Or, maybe not 40, the maths there's a bit.
Yeah.
The maths there's a touch more.
Maybe slightly longer.
Maybe, okay, you take that like 60, 70,
60,
70 years. I'm not calling people in China slags. I'm not calling many.
That is not.
I'm not calling 9th century Chinese.
This is not my episode.
No, I'm not calling 9th century Chinese peasants slags. That's
Today's topic.
Today's topic. Which medieval peasant was the sluttiest? That was.
If you guys would like to hear that topic, though, leave it in the comment below. What did you think?
I'm not encouraging medieval. I'm not encouraging this. But this is the thing. So, like, you meet a monk when you're a young child and you meet a monk who's 20, and then that same monk lives the next 70 years, and your great granddaughter meets them, and you're like, oh, and he's like, oh, I met your great granddaughter. They write it down as like, this monk has lived for 4 generations of my family.
Yeah.
Which in this day and age is 200 years.
Yeah.
Or, is like...
Yeah, it's like 30, 40 years each generation, right? Something like that.
You say 40 years a generation, that's 100... That monk's 180 years old. No, that monk just...
Bro's 90.
Bro's 90.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. He might still be up and fit and healthy because, as I said, he eats a consistent diet, he exercises every day, he breathes mountain air, he drinks clean water, which you'd get on the top of a mountain. And it's that thing of, out of context, if you practice the Wudang martial arts, you can live for hundreds of years. That's bullshit.
Yes.
If you devote yourself to the monastic lifestyle of a Wudang monk at a young age, you can live for a very long time.
Yeah.
Maybe not hundreds of years, but in context, you live for a long time.
Yeah.
Because without sounding like it's the be-all and end-all, good diet, exercise, clean air, clean water, no stress.
You're laughing, right?
Laughing.
But it's like you say though. It's conditional, not because of the training, but because of a specific lifestyle. And the lifestyle is not necessarily an indication of the martial art, especially in modern day, right? So if you were to have a club, let's just say it's a karate club.
Let's say it's a
karate club that's saying, if you train our version of karate, you're going to get X, Y, and Z, including long life and slutty peasants. Then obviously, I'm sorry, I'm on a roll now. But the thing is though, is that you end up with people that will go into that club with that expectation, and funnily enough, when they realise that expectation is not going to be met, you will get instructors that will often bullshit you to go, oh no, because you have to practice much longer. You have to be, this is a lifetime study. So just keep coming and you'll get there. And that's when I start getting into the realms of, you are a dangerous person because you are making promises that you cannot keep. So for me, when I look at the marketing of martial art clubs, and I believe we touched on this last season with the with one of our episodes, I can't remember the title of the episode, but we touched on this kind of stuff and advertising and marketing. And one of the things that I always worry about is when people say, learn self-defense, self-confidence, X, Y, ba. And don't get me wrong, we use it in our marketing, but only because I know that I actually do those things.
You actually do teach self-defense.
I actually do teach self-defense. We do improve people's confidence because we get them pressure testing stuff from an early age, and we build up their skill set slowly so that they don't feel overwhelmed. So, we don't throw a kid into full-blown sparring in session 1. We get them doing gentle tag sparring and get them used to making that gentle contact through grappling and stuff like that. So I know that I'm providing those skills to people. Some people take to it better than others, but nevertheless, I'm still delivering that stuff. The issue that I have is when an instructor will say that this is for self-defense and they do not deliver that. And that, to me, as soon as that boundary has been crossed, you are now a bullshit instructor.
Yeah.
And I think for me, because I'm quite passionate about this, because it's one of those things where self-defense is okay. Right. So let's just take it. Like, if you go to a martial art and the martial art is not as effective as another martial art. So let's just say, in the nicest way possible, let's just say you go and do Wing Chun, and you want to be as good of a fighter as a Dutch kickboxer. The likelihood is you're probably not going to be as good at fighting. Okay? Not because Wing Chun's bad, but because the general experience would be kickboxers are sparring all the time, they're often competing. The martial art that they practice is very effective for sparring rule sets, in my opinion. I would say, from my experience of what I've watched of Wing Chun, they probably don't spar as much, or if they do, I would say they might find a slightly harder job coming against somebody that is sparring very, very regularly and doing really good live drilling.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think in a weird way, Wing Chun I really enjoyed because their ethos was never anything other than we are a self-protection martial art.
And this is the point that I wanted to make, is that if you go into the Wing Chun school and they're telling you you're going to get good at fighting from training with us, you're going to be able to outfight anybody in a sparring context,
they're lying.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's Bullshido. Because now you're lying about the content in your class. So I think it almost comes down to the instructors really being honest with their students. I think that's kind of like, for me, that's the antithesis of what Bullshido is, because I would happily go to a club that says, because I'm actually funny, so I used to do Tai Chi as well as Pat. I didn't do it with Pat, I did it separately, and the Tai Chi school I went to was very much so based around, we're just going to practice the forms, which there is nothing wrong with that whatsoever. The forms themselves, very much like karate, do have a lot of grappling techniques in them. They have a lot of striking techniques in them. However, you are not practicing those techniques. You're practicing the form itself. You're doing the solo practice of the art, which is done slowly and controlled. And for the most part now, it's practiced in a way which is for aiding balance, improving joints in older practitioners, keeping moving, fitness and stuff like that, and lifestyle, right? You cannot say, as an 80-year-old going to that club, that I've done I've gone through the long form a few times and now I can fight. Okay? And for me, I went into that club and they were honest about that. They said, listen, this is just about doing the form. This is about movement. This is about a bit of fitness. This is about social. This is about community. And because they said that, I was like, you know what? Fair play. Yeah, because you're being honest with your art. Now, interestingly, the guy that I used to train with, we'd have conversations about the practical application of stuff. But he said, instead of being like, oh no, just keep doing Tai Chi and you'll be able to do it. He was like, listen, mate, here's a DVD. Watch this DVD. Bring it back to me next week. This is some of the application for some of the stuff in the long form. I was like, oh, cheers, that's brilliant. And I had a look through it. It was really interesting. I didn't go back going, now I've watched the video, now I'm going to kick the shit out of everybody at Tai Chi on a Wednesday. It was more so of, I understand that he's trying to guide me, but he's also telling me, this is the parameters of what we do. If you're interested in other things, here's some examples of it. If you want me to help you find a club that does that, I will happily try and put you in contact with the right people. Yeah. And I think that's the sign of a good instructor, and it's the sign of somebody that is has a good kind of understanding of what they do in terms of being able to be honest with their students. And it's the same thing with me. I'd like to think that the club that we've built, and we mentioned it a couple of times, I encourage cross training. If a student was to come to me saying oh Jack, we haven't done as much groundwork recently, I really enjoy the groundwork, I'm not going to turn around to them and say, don't worry, we're going to do 3 groundwork sessions next week and then we'll make sure we cover it for you. I'll say, look, listen, groundwork's not an integral part of what we do. It's a small part of what we do. The likelihood is we're going to do groundwork maybe once a month. Okay? Not because I don't see value in it, just because I see more value in other things because of the art that we do.
That's the amount of time it's appropriate to spend on groundwork.
For what we do, what we do with it. Like we mentioned earlier, if we get onto the floor, it's understanding some basic pinning, an ability to get up safely, or if you've been pinned, being able to escape a pin and then get up.
Yeah.
That's what we use groundwork for. We don't really spar on the ground much, or if we do it with the goal of improving those skills for our general objective, which is to get back up.
Yeah.
So it's like, know a few pins, know how to transition just in case you end up in that position, and then go from there. And, if I had a student that says that, I'd say, listen, we're not going to be doing this regularly. If you are really interested in groundwork and you love it, instead of me being a Bullshido instructor and going, no, just keep coming karate. One day you will be master of groundwork. I'll be like, listen, mate, right, here's Dave. Right, here's Dave's number. Dave does a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu club down in Warwick. Right, if you want to go to him, go and check him out. He's going to give you what you want with this. And I usually say, like, if you have time to do both, fantastic. It'd be great to see you, great to see you. And it'd be great to actually learn from you what you learn at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But likewise, if you've only got, like, 2 hours a week that you want to dedicate to a martial art and you'd rather do ground fighting and submission grappling, I'll go, listen, mate, it was great having you here. Go and experience that for a bit. You're always welcome back.
Yeah. You raise an incredibly good point, which is if you have a student who is going to something like, you take the ground fighting example, they're going and doing BJJ, the next time we are on the mat, it could be, oh, mate, I know you've been really, really training your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It would be great to see what you've learned.
Yeah.
And that's not a sort of, yes, tell me the secrets of my enemies. Like it elevates the club because if anything, it's the very human admittance of, I don't know everything.
Sure.
If we've got a ground fighting segment, but I know that there's somebody here who is more experienced at BJJ than I am. Am I teaching appropriately? Are these techniques sensible? Do they work? If I go to the ground, are there better ways to escape the pin that we're working with? Are there better ways to maneuver around the guy to get off him and stand up and get back on our feet, which is one of the main objectives of our game as karatekas? And I think it's something that, like, Bullshido is bred in solidarity. Not solidarity, in isolation.
Yeah.
I see Aikido was bred in fucking hell.
Pat's having a moment, guys.
He was so mean about Aikido, I can't stop thinking about it. Bullshido is bred in isolation.
Yeah.
Is what I've just taken 5 minutes to say.
Cool.
And I think, and again, it's kind of, you can get into the idea of it's this cult-like mindset, or it's people wanting to believe a specific thing is real and trying to make it work and try to prove that it works and fighting for it. The Sistema guys, I don't know if it is necessarily Sistema, but like there's a video of this old boy who's training in something. I think it's Sistema. If it's not Sistema, I apologize. But it's the way that he's kind of like throwing his arms into these weird L shapes, and you're looking at it, and it's just like, brother, I can tell that doesn't work. But he wants it to work so badly. And I don't know if it's a case of he's isolated himself and gone, I want this to be, I want this to work, it'll work. Or if people have been unkind to him about the fact that his system doesn't work and he's chosen to ignore them and go, fuck you, I'm just going to, I'm going to do my martial art because I believe my martial art works.
Yeah.
And it's the same logic as these, like, Aikido dudes that stop a sword with their mind and create these Aiki force fields and that kind of thing. Of like, they want it to be true so badly. They want it to be true. And in a weird way, I do feel sorry for those kinds of people because one of the reasons I want, I love karate. I want karate to work. In a weird way, I want to be in a self-defense scenario at some point so I can pull off an amazing self-defense karate technique and then I can go, look, it works. Yeah. I'm amazing. You want what you do to be effective if it claims to be effective.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tai Chi, I think, has managed to skate under the radar in a certain way because Tai Chi, as it stands, doesn't claim to be anything other than a holistic art for increasing your breath capacity and your joint mobility and your overall health and and prescribing meditative states and that kind of thing. And I feel like those who still understand that it is descended from a physical fighting art and was distilled. We're not going to go into the history now of anything for the time, and I have definitely spoken about it before. And I feel like those people, they kind of have to treat it a little bit like they're like dealers at a party. They have to be like, oh, you like Tai Chi, do you? Well, you wanna try a fighting system? I got a fighting system for you right here. You know, just once, man. That's all you need. You just need to try it once, and then you'll be hooked. And I feel like that's the issue of like so many people refuse to believe it. I remember not necessarily having. I remember I was talking to somebody who I was training with 5 or 6 years ago, and he was like, "What are you doing tonight?" I'm going to hit the gym, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually just on my way to my Tai Chi class." And he'd go like, "Oh, Tai Chi's rubbish," and I'm like, "Well, no, I find it helpful. It helps, it helps me relax, passes the time. I enjoy, getting in touch with my movement. I like developing my flow." And he's like blowing up at me over the phone of like, "That's ridiculous. You should be coming to train Krav Maga with me, not some flouncy system with China that's basically for dancers." And I'm like, "Brother, I've just said I'm doing it for my relaxation. By the sounds of it, you need some relaxation too. Like, don't get me wrong. This isn't the Tai. Next episode isn't Tai Chi versus Krav Maga, which is a more effective street fighting art application. That's not what it's about. And it's kind of like I did Tai Chi for a long time, not knowing it was a fighting system. I did Tai Chi because it worked well alongside my Aikido, and I was at a stage in my life where I wanted to do something calm, and I wanted to work on my relaxation and my internals. I wanted to work on my flow. I feel like I've got a great flow now. Like, as in terms of like whenever we drill, I feel like I managed to keep solid flow in everything. I managed to kind of lose that stiffness that you see in a lot of beginners.
Sure.
And it's because of doing things like Tai Chi. And I didn't know at the time Tai Chi was based in a fighting system.
Yeah.
And now I do. And I've read books on it, and I've trained and I've seen how it works, and that's really cool. But I didn't go into Tai Chi because I've been promised the ancient secrets of the masters of like, oh, this amazing fighting art that's better than Muay Thai and karate and boxing combined. That's not at all why I started it. That's information I stumbled across.
Yeah, sure.
And I think the biggest issue is the biggest boon to me in avoiding Bullshido has always been the community around me.
Yeah.
Whether that's the club itself, or whether that's having mates who are interested in martial arts that I can go to class and I can show them a video and they go, no, I don't think that works. Or they go, oh, that's really cool, we should try that the next time we go. And it's about having that group of people who, in a very constructive, a very fun, very familial way, you can pressure test something. It's not like this must work for the honour of my art. But It's a case of like, does this actually work? Let's have a play. And this is kind of why I say I think Bullshido is born in isolation. Yeah. Because if you have nobody to tell you that you're wrong, you'll think you're right. Because people want to be right more than they want to be wrong.
Sure.
And I think, it's kind of, I'm not going to get into kind of the esoteric of that statement more than anything. But if we had to kind of put a pin on how what's the best way to kind of debunk Bullshido, my advice from a personal perspective, because I'm a soppy little optimist, would be you don't want to come at these people with aggression or with ridicule.
No.
Offer them the chance to pressure test. If they don't want to do that, if they don't want to get involved, they don't want to have a discussion, then you can write them off. Yeah. Because it's that thing of if they have students and they're claiming to produce self-defense fighters, and you as an experienced, if not more experienced, self-protection practitioner are going, that's not effective procedure at all, then it's not on you to change the mind of the teacher, it's on your mind to help the students. Yeah. I think in a weird way. And if we take it back to this kind of, let's call it cult mentality.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that by going, this is useless, this is fucking bullshit.
No.
That's not, and like, I don't care what it is, if you try and dissuade anybody of something with that attitude, you'll solidify their belief in what they do.
Yeah.
You'll drive them away.
I totally agree with that. I think that my conclusion to this episode would be that whether you think you're practicing Bullshido or you would like to pressure test what you do, or you're externally looking at somebody else's art and how they're practicing, I think the number one thing that I would say is just apply critical thinking, right? The critical thinking being like, okay, I'm watching this drill online, or I've seen this thing being done, and critically, I don't, I'm looking at it and I just think it looks like shit. I think I don't really get it. So instead of going, this wouldn't fucking work in a street fight, and then going, oh yeah, or try that against an MMA fighter, maybe your job should be like asking the question of like, what does this drill do? Why does this, what is the reason behind practicing this drill, or why do you train this way, or etc. Try and educate yourself on why they do it. Now, don't get me wrong, if their answer is as simple as, because that's just the way it is, and they don't seem to have any genuine reasoning as to why they practice in that way, then by all means, that's, you could then go, this is bullshit. It doesn't mean you have to tell them that. It doesn't mean you have to call them out in the comment section going, you're full of shit. So what, and then like, on the other side of it, if you're in class and you're doing something that you're looking at and you're just going, I don't understand how this fits into either self-defense or how this fits into the sparring that we do. I don't really get what this is supposed to do. Then it is your right as a student to be able to ask your instructor, why do we do this? Like, what's the reasoning behind it? If they haven't already contextualized it, being able to go like, why are we doing it this way? And in my opinion, if your instructor's response is shut up and do it, or we do it because we have to, then that is the reason. That might be a reason to go, maybe this is Bullshido, or potentially is my instructor considering the training methods of the class, or are they just trying to replicate lessons taught to them? So yeah, I think it all comes down to the critical thinking of the practitioner or the viewer of the content to be able to kind of distinguish between, okay, take my emotions out of it. Obviously, this is not how I train, or this is not how I've seen other people train, and I think there's better methods. But it's just being able to go, you know what? Okay, are they doing this for a specific reason? Is this drill to improve a skill that I haven't considered, or are they doing this really specific flow drill for sparring? If that's the case, or is it the best way to do it? Maybe not. But it's being able to have conversations with people and actually like discuss the martial arts. So as an example, with me, I recently got into a conversation with somebody on Facebook because they were posting some bunkai, so kata application, of something that, in the nicest way possible, is not effective for a self-defense model. The reason it's not effective is because it's the wrong range, the wrong distance. The attack is not a reasonable. It's not a reasonable attack from somebody that has never trained karate. It's your classic step forward oizuki, and then they block, they kick, all that kind of stuff. And in the comments, I don't usually jump in and go, "You don't know what you're doing," because that's not the person I am. However, if they're claiming something, as an example, like, I was reading through some of the comments, because I always do, because it's interesting to see what people's opinions are. And obviously you get the guys like, that don't work in a real fight. Oh, test that in the fucking octagon. And some of that, which is fair. I understand where they're coming from, but I would potentially take a step back and try and understand what it's good for. And anyway, I saw the content creator respond to another comment saying, this is for self-defense. And for me, that's when I feel like, as a self-defense instructor and as a long-time practitioner of karate and teacher of practical karate, that's when I jumped in. And I didn't do it in a nasty way, but I was like, I would argue that, I was like, respectfully, I would argue that this probably isn't the best for self-defense. And I listed the reasons why. Not in a nasty way, but in a way to say, like, if I were you, maybe consider these things in future, because, if you're teaching this as self-defense, there could be the risk to your students that you're teaching something that is going to potentially put them in danger. And for me, that's when I think I have a right to be able to then go, okay, here's my background, here's the reason why I know what I'm talking about, and here's a bit of a solution for you in a nice, respectful, instructive, but helping way, opposed to, this is bullshit, fuck you.
Yeah.
And I think if more people kind of had that mentality of like the martial arts, we're trying to enrich each other, and we're trying to help each other, and we're trying to improve each other. It's not going to happen through this like smacking of heads all the time of that's wrong, this is right, that you're shit and all that stuff. I think there needs to be more of like a bit of a stand back and go, right, what am I seeing? What is it trying to show me? And what can I learn from watching this content? And if you come to the conclusion of you don't understand it or you think it's bullshit, maybe have a word with the person privately, or just go, listen, like, I don't really understand what this drill's for. Or leave a comment saying, can you explain to me why you do this drill? Instead of going, it's crap. And then obviously you can make your own opinions from that.
Yeah, 100%. I think my kind of closing statement on this would be, as cliche as it sounds, try and form your own opinion, speak from your own experience, but try and be kind.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you're either going to really damage somebody's confidence by going, that's fucking bullshido, you don't know what you're fucking doing. Nobody wants to hear that with anything they produce.
No.
With anything they've put time and effort into doing. If somebody this morning, we've been very fortunate, but it's kind of, I can only imagine how it would feel if we went in the comments one day and somebody would be like, you two don't know what you're fucking talking about, you're just a pair of jokers sitting home in your living room. Well, that would hurt.
Sure.
I'm thick. We can be thick-skinned about this. We can walk it off. The people are going to say nasty shit online. That's just the nature of it. But like that would stick. And for somebody to do that with something like a martial art that people do really put in time and energy into doing, even if it's not necessarily the best thing for them. If you do see something like that online, it's better to have a conversation with somebody and go like, what do you think the application of this is for? In self-defense, as Jack said. As an example, and I think it's a case of the biggest proponent of these kind of bullshido artists, to use pejorative language about it, is they've practiced in a vacuum. They haven't had criticism. They haven't had the right kind of critical voices going, does this work? And I think like my kind of closing statement on it is then, even the worst techniques can be modified and can be helped with the right help and instruction and the right people around them, because like some techniques fine, some techniques just won't work, some techniques are just for show, but I think actually having the opportunity to engage with somebody in a positive way and understand the principles behind what they do. Even if the conversation comes, these guys don't understand what they're doing, or these guys know that they're fake and they're just online artists, con artists, then that's fine. You've learned something, and you've not done it in a way that you should feel bad about.
Sure. And
I think my closing statement on it is kind of, Bullshido does exist for several reasons. And you shouldn't let the fact that you practice a tried and tested and proven martial art either let you enter the conversation from a position of power. You shouldn't be there like, well, I practice karate and karate's absolutely faultless. Yeah. So what you're doing is quite obviously bullshit to me because I do the magical art of karate, or whatever it might be. There's a time and a place for every martial art, right? We've spoken about how BJJ is not, in my opinion, and maybe yours as well, Jack, a good martial art for self-defense.
I would argue
because
that.
Because if your whole game plan is to take somebody to the floor and rip the limbs off, not a good plan.
No.
And I don't say that from a sense of superiority because I do karate currently, or because I've done other martial arts in the past, or because I'm a mixed martial artist in the broadest sense. I'm not sat there with this kind of smug look of superiority when I say I don't think BJJ is a good self-protection art because of what it is. Because it's a grappling ground game art, and if you're rolling around on the floor in a self-protection scenario, you've done something wrong. Is what I'm taught.
I could totally agree.
If anybody out there wants to try and have a proper discourse with me about that, then I'm here. Let's chat. But if somebody's going to get in the comments and be like, that's ridiculous, BJJ is the best self-protection art because nobody has good ground game, so you'll just immediately decimate your opponent. Prove it. Like,
So,
you know, and so I think it's again a case of Bullshido is a part of our community. Not a part we should elevate, but it's a part of our community. And we need to try and help people that produce it to understand the error of their ways, because as a community we might all have different opinions, we might all practice different styles, but we're all martial artists at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue, Pat, to the last portion of the episode, which is to say to people, if you do want to talk to us about this, leave a comment. I want everybody to try and practice, though. If you can withdraw yourselves and hold yourselves back. If there's something that you don't agree with today, let's have an intelligent conversation about it in the comments.
Let's have a proper discussion about it rather than resulting into a shit fight in the comments.
100%.
Similarly, if anything I've said today has really ground your gears, please contact me at Good Medicine Martial Arts on Instagram, and I'll block you. No, please do. This is the thing. If anybody wants to get in touch about what we discussed today, please get in touch. Jack, for the same reason, where can we find you in the club?
You can find me at www.cotswoldkarateschool.com, and you can also find me on the Cotswold Karate School Instagram page too. If you've come this far, all I will ask is that leave a comment and tell us your favourite smelling candle. Because it's a very strong topic. It could be an episode on its own. So please leave that in the comments so we know what that is. Other than that, where can we find you, Pat?
As I've said, you can find me on Instagram at Good Medicine Martial Artist. If you do have the time, please don't forget to leave 5-star rating on your preferred podcast restaurant. Your preferred podcast platform.
God bless.
Of choice. All engagement is good engagement, and as I've said repeatedly, the more we get up the charts, the more content we're able to produce on a better time frame. It helps us, it helps 100%. You. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being sensible and kind and generous in the comments. Jack, thank you for being kind and sensible and generous with the conversation today.
Cut the mic, I'm beating the shit out of you. Come here, Aikido boy.
Come here, man.
Thanks for listening, guys.
We'll see you next time.
Take care.